First, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the other people that I've got. I read about energy and science for Wired.com, and I'm working on a history of green technology in America over the last couple hundred years. And what it's led me to do is to think about technology in a lot of different ways, and that's what both of my co-speakers will be doing as well. Heather Fleming has a design firm called Catapult that deals primarily with the developing world and how to build the types of solutions that make sense in those countries, not the type of solutions that we think make sense from here. Josh is actually doing kind of more on the design, policy, technology. I'm actually going to pretty much let him tell you about his work at Regional because I think it's unique, and you'll be able to see that. My talk is actually on how to think about this climate and energy problem. Like, you hear about this a lot, and you hear a lot of ways of describing it, historical analogies, and I want to suggest kind of a new one for you today because I think that it includes you in it, and I think a lot of the solutions that people talk about now are about scientists and engineers, and they're not about people. Hey, look at that. All right, it worked. So, when scientists and engineers think about this problem, they go back and they look at things and situations where scientists did like a great job. And one of the first ones that they come upon is the Manhattan Project, which is where we took a bunch of scientists and we put them in New Mexico, and we said, build an atomic bomb, and then they did. And this is actually considered like a major success, and obviously, this might not be the way that we would think about solving climate and energy, but a lot of scientists do. The other one they look at is the Apollo program. This is like, 10 years after we reached space for the very first time, all of a sudden we put a man on the moon, right? I mean, this is like a major accomplishment. And again, it was like we took a couple hundred, actually in this case, a few thousand people, we stuck them in a room, we had them roll up their sleeves, and they solved it, right? They like made it work. But the climate and energy problems that we have, that is to say, pulling a lot of fossil fuels out of our economy and switching to a lot more renewable energy, using a lot less materials, no matter how many skinny ties and kind of short sleeve button downs you throw at this problem, it's not actually going to solve it, right? And it's interesting. I mean, our otherwise awesome energy secretary, Steve Chu, he kind of buys in a little bit to the scientists are going to figure this out. They're going to save us from ourselves, because they're going to come up with technologies that don't require anything from you, and yet your life will just get better and better. Nothing bad will happen. The green tech revolution will be perfect. But what we know from the history of the last couple hundred years of major changes to systems, be it the internet or automobiles or railroads or anything, is that there are major winners and there are major losers, and that things are going to be messy, and that things are going to be hard. So when I'm looking around for the right metaphor, if it's not the Manhattan Project, if it's not the Apollo program, what is it? What do we need it to have, right? The Apollo program, all it did was get something to the moon. Fundamentally, that sounds really hard, but it's much harder to change things here on Earth, because you have to get people to do something else. We also need a metaphor that kind of incorporates totally new energy systems, right? That are going to completely transform the way people live their lives. And really the last one I think is the most important. We need some kind of metaphor that incorporates people who had a vision, really a way of seeing the world that was fundamentally kind of morally driven, even if it wasn't perfectly moral. So what I came to is Manifest Destiny, so a brief history primer. This is this period of American history during the 19th century when essentially the America that came into being, right? We stole California from Mexico, we stole all Native American lands, we did all these bad things that everyone knows about. Messy, people died. On the other hand, it's impossible to imagine America without this happening, right? This is from sea to shining sea, this is how it happened. It was a part of it that's underrated, I think, because all the bad things we did. It's the kind of energy transformation that occurred when we did this. We were both using new types of energy, and we were also pulling more energy from the earth, largely because we were able to use wind to pump water to irrigate fields, which then used the sun's energy to create more grain, which then fed this growing country. And I mean, the interesting thing about this is that we don't really think of manifest destiny as anything to do with energy, but it really did, and it transformed completely the way this country works. The other part of manifest destiny, I think, makes it a better metaphor for what's happening, is that destiny, in this case, is just belief. It's just a lot of people believing that we really needed to settle the West. And they face challenges that are far beyond anything we can even imagine. And they just matched it up. There was some hope of economic gain, not even necessarily economic gain, but just some hope of it. And they just believed. And I think they were willing to break from the past in a way that we clearly need to do again. And I think this is one of the most amazing quotes from Melville's first book, written on board a steamboat. He says, "The past is the textbook of tyrants, the future, the Bible of the free." This entire age is kind of infused with this idea of possibility and progress and change. And this is a spirit I think we need to actually recapture if we want to completely remake society. We basically need to recolonize our entire country for renewable energy production if we actually want to make a dent in things. And Manifest Destiny was the last time that this happened, where we actually went and we took the entire country and changed the way that we used energy on it, with the exception of the automobile. The interesting thing is people think about technologies, like say the automobile, in a way that it was just like a breakthrough, like the car descended on us and all of society was transformed. But really, if you think about what a car is and what it does and how it works, it requires roads. There were 200 miles of roads but connecting cities in America in 1900. And we basically had to rebuild all that. It took political will. It took people wanting roads. It wasn't just the technology of the car or the internal combustion engine. And what I think is really great about that is it means that we get to determine a lot of what's going to happen in the next 100 years. We don't have to bank on those engineers to come up with exactly the solution that we need. We can come up with the new ways of living that take the technologies that already exist and use them to create the kind of future that we want to live in. Thank you.